Alright guys, so we're going to look at using congruent statements today to determine congruent angles and sides of triangles. Okay, so to determine if two angles are congruent based on a variation of angles and sides. Okay, so real quick, let's look at some examples. So first of all, this right here is what's called a congruent statement. Okay, so this congruent statement up here says triangle GHI, and this little symbol means congruent. We talked about this before. It's just an equal sign with a little squiggle over the top of it, or a tilde over the top of it. So that means congruent. So triangle GHI is congruent to triangle IQR. Now, one thing to be aware of in a congruent statement is that the order of all these letters is important. Okay, it matters. So letter G, you notice it's first, and letter I is first. Those two correspond to each other in the shape itself. Okay, as you can see right here, angle G and angle I are congruent. They both have one arc, which means they're the same amount. Okay, and then also H and Q correspond, and you can see angle H and angle Q both have two arcs, and then I and R correspond, and you can see that R and I both have 3 marks. Alright, so not only does that work with angles, it also works with lines, with the sides. So the side GH, it corresponds to the side IQ. You can see right here, GH has one line, IQ has one line. Alright, and then you've got the line HI and the line QR. HI has 2 marks, and QR has 2 marks. Alright, and then kind of using your imagination a little bit, GI and IR. So GI has 3 marks and IR has 3 marks. Alright, so it's important. The order of this stuff matters. Alright, you wouldn't want to say triangle GHI is congruent to triangle RQI. Okay, that's not true, because you're telling me different sides correspond and different angles correspond that don't correspond to each other. Okay, so it's very important that you make sure that you keep the order of these things correct. Okay, so right here, it's first and very simple. We want to know what segment, what line is congruent to GH. So I look and say, oh, well, GH has one line. So which one has one line? Oh, IQ. So I would say IQ. And again, the order matters. Okay, I wouldn't want to say QI. I want to say IQ. And you can also look up here and tell GH is the first 2 letters, IQ is the first 2 letters. So that's another way you can do it, is by looking at the congruent statement, or you can do it by looking at the shapes and seeing which sides are congruent. Alright, so let's go and look at number 2. Triangle ZXY is congruent to triangle ZUT, and then we know what's XY congruent to. Alright, well, XY is this side right here. Well, it has 2 lines. What side has 2 lines right here? It'd be this one. But now order matters. So if you're confused on which order to do, I would look at the congruent statement. It tells you the order. XY is the second, third letter. So what's the second, third letter here? UT. So I'm going to say UT, not TU. Alright. Okay, so I'm going to pause and let you guys try these next 2 real quick. 2, you're doing angles, and it's a little bit different. So right here, they want to know what's congruent to angle LKM. Well, easiest way to do it is to look up here and see what are the orders of the letters we use right here. So we did angle LKM. So real simple, this one's going to be angle KLT. L corresponds to K, K to L, and M to T. So if it's L then K then M, this one needs to be K then L then T. So we say angle KLT. Now on this one, similarly, we've got what's congruent to angle YWX. So on this triangle, Y comes first, then W, then X. So if we number them, right, Y is 1, W is 2, X is 3, and number the corresponding ones on this triangle, G would be 1, X would be 2, and W would be 3. Alright, so then we would say angle GXW is the angle that corresponds. Alright, in the shape you can see YWX and then GXW would be the ones that correspond to each other. Alright. Okay, so let's practice a couple more. Triangle ABC congruent to triangle AJK. What's CA congruent to? Alright, so CA, that's the third letter, then the first letter. So what's the third letter on this one? K, then the first letter is A. So we would say KA. The third letter, then the first letter. On this one, angle L. Well, angle L is the third letter, so we'd say the third letter on this one. be angle D. So angle L must be congruent to angle D. It is that simple. Okay, I promise. It's not any more complicated than that. Just figure out what's the right order of the corresponding letters. Okay. So now we're going to write a statement that indicates the triangles in each pair are congruent. Okay, so we're actually going to write the statement this time. So we're going to write the congruent statement for these triangles. And you don't have to start with any particular letter on these. Any letter will work. But the key is you got to write both triangles in a way that with the corresponding parts are in the right position. So for number 7, I would say triangle. Let's do this one first. Let's do RST. And I'm going to say congruent, right? My little squiggle with my equal sign is congruent to triangle what? All right, well, I did R first. R had the 1 mark. So in the other triangle, which angle has the 1 mark? Oh, it's also R. So I'm going to start with R. All right, then I went to S. S is over here with 2 marks. So what has 2 marks on this one? V. So I'll say RV. And then, of course, T had 3. It was my last letter. What's the 3 marks here? W. So I'll say RVW. So there's the congruent statement that tells me these 2 triangles are congruent. Okay, and you could have started with S. You could have said STR. This one would have just then been VWR. All right, so it's important the letters that correspond are in the same positions. All right, so let me do one more. All right, so right here we've got triangle. Let's do this one first. Let's start with I, and then we'll go to E, and then H. So we'll say triangle IEH. This part you can't really get wrong in the beginning. Okay, you can put any of these in whatever order you want. The part you can get wrong is when you start to match them up on the second triangle. So you got to get this part right. If angle I is first, well, what's 1 mark? What's the angle that has 1 mark over here? It's also angle I. So we'll say angle I, or triangle I. And then we went to E, which was 3 marks. What's 3 over here? J. So we'll say IJ. And then the last one we used was 2, was H. So over here, the one was 2 is also H. So IJH. All right. All right, you guys go ahead and try number 9. All right, so in this one, this first triangle, I said let's do triangle LMN. All right, it's going to be congruent to, well, LMN, that's 1 mark, then 2, then 3. So my first mark, this one's M, 2 marks is L, 3 marks is W, so MLW. All right, now on this one, you're going to mark the angles and sides of each pair of triangles to indicate that they are congruent. So I'm going to actually put the marks in now to indicate which sides and angles are congruent. All right, so G is going to be congruent to U. So I'm going to put angle G 1 mark and angle U 1 mark. I'm going to give 2 marks. And I corresponding to V, so I'm going to give V 2 marks. H corresponds to H, so on both H's, I'm going to give them 3 marks. All right, now we got to do the sides also. I'll do those in red. So IG, well, this is the side between the 1 and 2 marks. What's the side between 1 and 2 marks here? Right here's 1, right here's 2, so this side. All right. The side IH is between 2 and 3 marks, so I'll give it 2 dashes. What's between 2 and 3 marks over here? That would be this side, so that's 2 marks. So then the other side's, of course, going to be 3 marks, because I don't know that any of these sides are the same amount on the triangle, so I've got to give them different markings. All right, let's do one more, and I'll let you guys try one. UVW. So let's say angle U is 1. So this angle U is also 1, because those 2 correspond to each other. And then W and E will both get 2 marks. And then V and F will both get 3 marks. Alright. And so then side UW connects 1 to 2 marks. Right here, 1 to 2 marks. So that's going to be 1 dash. And then side EF, we give it 2. Right? EF would be the same as WV. And then, of course, the other one's 3. Because UV, this side, would be the same as UF, which is this side. Okay? So you guys try the last one. You can see right here, these 2 angles share the same mark. F and K share the same mark. J and E should have the same mark, because those are all the ones that correspond to each other. L corresponds to L, K to F, and J to E. And then their sides, FE, corresponds to KJ, so those have the same mark, and the others fall in, so you can see what those are. And 13 is very similar. W corresponds to U, V to H, and angle U here to angle G over here. And you mark your sides and you're done. Alright, so time to practice a little bit. Appreciate your time.